Well, it started actually before he was born, when we thought it was a perfectly healthy pregnancy up until when it was not. And in a really quick turnaround time, we found out that we were going to have some problems. And we went from, having this great pregnancy to the brakes on, and we had no idea what we were going to expect.
They didn't even know that Hudson was going to have this complication until really just a few days before he was born.
I had the scan, and you could tell there was something, on his neck. It was 0.995 pounds, and he was 7 pounds when he was born. So 1/7 of his body mass was that teratoma.
It was crushing. I mean, you just have all these pictures of what it's going to be, and all of a sudden it's nothing like you could ever imagine.
We were putting together a team, we were getting a plan, we were figuring things out her water broke, you guys are in, and here we go.
He came with a massive, very impressive tumor in the neck region that was deforming most of the airways.
We talk about the ABCs, sort of airway, breathing, circulation, and A is airway, and if you don't have an airway, everything else doesn't matter.
We'll use this procedure that is called exit. What it means is that you will continue to do a procedure while the baby's still attached to the mother, he's still receiving oxygen from the mom until you're able to establish an airway.
We had to make a decision, when was I not going to be able to get the airway, and Dr. Hilfiker, being a pediatric surgeon, was able to actually open his chest. The two of us found his airway and able to get the breathing tube in.
18 minutes of low oxygen, and he moved right from a tracheotomy to a sternocostomy, cracked his chest, and made it happen. I mean, without that original get-go, Hud's not here.
Once we had his airway secure, there's this universal sigh of relief. And then you have still sort of a tenuous airway bringing him over the way the tube was secured. So there were a lot of people that escorted him from Sharp over to Rady's.
It seemed like we spent a half a day moving through that tunnel. I mean, we would stop, he would push more blood, they worked on him. I think he crashed a couple times in the hall, so it's that tunnel to the NICU. I mean, we were moving just inches at a time, it seemed like, but he did a great job. He kept him stable, we moved him, and he got there. You focus at the task at hand, you focus on little things the whole time, it's like, all right, let's get through this hour, and that's, I think, what the tunnel really prepared me for. It was like, let's get through this next 3 feet, and let's, so it was, you just went through in stages.
It was really heart-wrenching to see Hudson go through that, and just to see him in that state. When I first met James, it was just really heart-wrenching to see his face and the concern that he had on his face and the love that he had for his little boy.
The NICU, the receiving team was awesome. The nurses are who you kind of remember the most in a lot of that early situation. I think it was Erin was our receiving nurse, and she was awesome.
He was absolutely beautiful, beautiful baby in every way, but just looked like he'd been through a war pretty much. It was definitely what I was expecting it to look like, but it was much more, just much more intense, and he looked very uncomfortable. He looked like he'd been through a lot because they did have to put a breathing tube in through his chest. So that was very intense and very scary. I'm sure it was scary for me in the medical field, so I'm sure it was terrifying for his parents.
I was in the hospital, I wasn't able to see Hudson, I was just coping myself, and they left and with this face of just horror. And after they met Erin and went through whatever happened over there, yeah, they came back with hope, and I could just see it in them. And I really give credit to that receiving staff, because at first he was, it seemed like he was just this thing they were trying to keep alive. He made it to the NICU and he became this baby boy again. That's when the nurses became your family. That's when talking to them about what was going to happen next or where we were headed, and that's all at that point, that's all you're worried about is what's going to happen tonight, what's going to happen tomorrow.
As a nurse practitioner, I worked closely with the physicians, the neonatologist in the unit to provide medical care, but I also spent a lot of time talking to the nurses and then the family and coordinating everything and explaining everything that was going on through all of those specialties so that the family had a good grasp of, we really did have a coordinated effort in order to take care of Hudson.
Elizabeth can explain anything in any term, in any format. I mean, she just is amazing that way. And she did. She took the time every day to sit down and talk with us to exactly where he was at, answer our million Google questions that we had to ask her. And she took the time, and it made a difference. I mean, it got me through it.
Yeah.
In Hudson's case, as a lot of the cases that we take care of that are critical, you want the very best for that child, and you want the best for that family. You can see in their emotions, that this is their child and they want to take care of it. And we try not to get tied up to any family in order to maintain that professional boundary, but we are human, and part of what makes us good at what we do is that we care about the families that we're taking care of.
It was our home. His first bath, his first bottle, his first everything. The first time I held him, I'll never forget. I hadn't seen his eyes open. This was a big one. And they had seen his eyes open. And I kept saying, I don't believe you guys. Like, you haven't seen his eyes. And Erin, Jean, they kept saying, no, we have. He's got the most beautiful eyes. I promise you'll see them. You're going to see them soon. And every time I went there, it wasn't the case. So finally, they took all these Polaroids of Hudson with his eyes wide open, and for proof. They're like, here you go. Here is the proof. His eyes are open. And not just alone, seeing your baby's eyes for the first time after him being in the hospital now for probably at least 3 weeks or a month.
What I remember most of Hudson is that he came out with a really strong personality. I'm gonna survive no matter what personality. He went through major reconstructive surgery of an airway. And so there were good days and bad days. There were days where we thought, this child may never eat by mouth. And he proved us wrong.
The world changes dramatically when you walk out the doors of the hospital. It's a bittersweet occasion because we've really truly held his life in our hands for, every day of his life since he was born. And so you're excited for the family to be able to go home, but you're scared for them as well.
It was scary because you're like, all of this that you've been doing, I have to do? How am I going to do this? First of all. And then I wouldn't say until we actually got him here and he was like in his crib and in his surrounding and with his brother. And then, you felt like this huge relief and it was going to be okay. And it wasn't going to be easy, but it was going to be okay.
He went home to a family that I knew would take the best care of him and has taken the best care of him.
We sent home a little baby who was in a car seat, and Hudson climbs and yells and talks and wants to go to school with his brother.
His father's an avid swimmer, and one of the things we talked about was, could he ever make it to the first buoy in La Jolla Cove? And Dad was adamant that what the goal was he could be a swimmer. And interestingly enough, it was his left side. He's now left-handed, and he actually throws a baseball incredibly well with his left arm. So it's pretty amazing that not only did he survive, but the one area that we're most concerned about function does great.
He
everything.
Does everything. He swims. He plays baseball. He's going to do the junior lifeguards this year. I mean, he just he hit the ground running.
It's great to see that he has done so well, and exciting for him and the family, and exciting for us to know that what we do makes a difference.
If you go to the neonatal intensive care unit and see these very small babies, and you think to yourself, what's their lives going to be? And when you see someone who comes out and is a healthy kid, is part of a great family, you realize why we do this.
What they've done and what they've given us is there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do to repay those people except for do your part, advocate for your little guy, and do your best to make him an amazing person.
I don't know if they know what they do for their families in there. It seems like they do their job and that's what they're trained to do, but it's so much more. And he wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have him if it wasn't for the nurses and doctors that got us through it. I have no doubt about that.
I think myself, the rest of the neonatologists and all the nurses are very pleased, and we're actually very proud that we were able to do what we did for Hudson.
Hudson, I love you. Even though I'm not your parent, I love who you are as a little boy. I'm sure you're a wonderful grown-up boy now, and I can't wait to see you again.
Thanks, Dr. Magic. This is for you.